The honourable member for St. Michael South East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make what I consider to be a brief intervention in relation to the estimates for 2018-2019. But before I do so, sir, I want to first of all congratulate the leader of the Barbados Labour Party for her presentation in this debate. The fact that it was short, Mr. Speaker, is not reflective, as the honourable member for St. Michael East said, of the substance with which was represented in this debate. Members on the other side would do well to realize that the fact that they stay long doing something does not mean that they're effective. It does not mean that they have achieved what they have set out to do. But what the leader of the Barbados Labour Party did when she presented in response to the member for St. Michael North East, in her presentation, was to make it clear to this country that at this juncture that we are at in our history, it is pointless for members on certainly this side to spend time repeating the things that have been told to the electorate in this country, that has been told to members on the other side over and over, to repeat the things that on every occasion, in every reply to the budget, every reply to the estimates, every press conference, every press statement that has been made, the things which all Barbadians have been echoing, not only to us, but certainly echoing quietly to members on the other side. Our date with destiny, sir, is on the horizon. The Barbados Labour Party leader asked members on the other side a number of questions which are pertinent to every single citizen of this country. Right now in this country, most Barbadians want to know what is the state of the reserves. And every member that has spoken since the leader of the Barbados Labour Party opposition has taken her seat, has avoided the very pertinent questions that have been asked by her in relation to the state of the reserves. If we are now, sir, at 4.5 weeks of reserves, we are now closer to our date with destiny than we were 2 weeks ago. And every Barbadian is trying to understand, how is it that these estimates are supposed to pull us back from the slippery slope upon which we now find ourselves? So it isn't that the leader of the Barbados Labour Party has to take us through the things that she has already been doing time after time and year after year. Because if the Minister of Finance speaks for 5 hours, the leader of the Barbados Labour Party can speak for 10. But the difference between her presentation and the Minister of Finance is that she will speak to the issues of this country that are being felt by every single Barbadian. And she will ask the questions that every single Barbadian has on the tip of their tongue in this country. Mr. Speaker, the fact that the Sustainable Recovery Plan that this administration has put forward speaks to 4 pillars upon which the document embodies. And it speaks to the issue of a society that is environmentally, economically, and socially sustainable with a return to investment grade. Made me reflect on the fact that from the time this Democratic Labour Party administration came to office, the words good governance were at the core of every vision that it had for this country and for this economy. All of a sudden, we are now at a most critical state in our history. But the words good governance have now been omitted from the discourse that the Democratic Labour Party administration would place in a document to give confidence to the people of this country that they are now in a position to take us out of the mess that we are in. But you see, the word good governance, they have a problem with that word right now. Because good governance would cause all of us to reflect on the things that are happening in each of the respective ministries. It would cause us to reflect on the issues of spending and the excessive spending that is happening. It would cause us to reflect on the issues of accountability and transparency in public life. It would cause us to reflect on the fact that this is the same administration that came to office in 2008, telling this country that it was going to impose ministerial codes of conduct to govern the conduct of its ministers. So to put good governance in a sustainable recovery plan would only cat-spraddle the Democratic Labour Party at this juncture.
Honourable Member, just a minute, please.
Honourable Member.
To place the words good governance would reflect on this administration in a negative way. But it is what is on the tip of the tongues of all right-thinking Barbadians, that you cannot tell people in this country to cut here and to cut there and that they're going to be sent home. But you yourselves who are imposing the policies on them will not hold yourself to the same standards to which you expect people to function in this society. So people are going home. People have less disposable income. But the very people who are cutting and slashing the source of income for all the Barbadians across this country are not prepared in introducing a plan such as this to hold themselves to a standard of good governance. And I need not remind the members on the other side that it is you who indicated that you were passing legislation at the last election to ensure that there was an integrity in public life bill that would come to this House. That you haven't passed the prevention of corruption legislation. It is still waiting to be proclaimed. I don't need to remind the people of Barbados that it is this administration that the Honourable Prime Minister is at the head and has the audacity to tell the people of this country that a 1929 piece of legislation in relation to anti-corruption should now govern members on the other side and govern his people. So when I look at this sustainable recovery plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I listen to members on the other side, one after the other speak in unison about how the leaders of the unions have come together and they've touted the social partnership. And they've said this is a social partnership at its best. Everything that is in this document is reflective of what the social partnership is about and what average Barbadians want. I want you to understand that Barbadians want good governance as well. But I want you to understand also, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the head of the Barbados Private Sector Association, while supporting the policies enunciated in this document, was very clear to point out to the people of this country that while there is broad consensus on the objectives in the document, he recognizes that implementation plans, which are critical to the success of the objectives, are still to be developed. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are in the same position today as we were in every single budget that the Minister of Finance presented in this chamber. Every single document and every single policy enunciated in this sustainable recovery plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, reflects every single promise that has been made previously by this administration and not adhered to. And I want to take you back to 2013, because you see, this administration spoke to the fact that it was going to restructure the Barbadian economy. It was going to restructure the statutory organizations, the statutory corporations. It spoke to the fact that you wouldn't have the supplementaries unless it was absolutely necessary. It spoke to the fact that you had to downsize. It spoke to legislation that was supposed to come in, whether it was the Housing Incentives Act, no matter what it was, this administration spoke to things that it was supposed to do. They spoke to a competitiveness commission, which is enunciated in this document as well. The error they made is that they put the Honourable Prime Minister to be the leader of the competitiveness commission. And if a man is not talking to his cabinet, he's not talking to his country, I do not know what authority he has to speak on the issue of competitiveness. Because I believe you have to lead by example. And if you are not speaking about the things that are necessary in business to be able to create an environment for people to be competitive and to encourage and to stimulate enterprise in this country and entrepreneurship, You have no authority to be able to be at the head of any competitiveness commission to be able to take this country forward. But these are the same things that are enunciated in this particular document yet again. So when you look at the Sustainable Recovery Plan and you say, okay, well, they have a plan and everything is now in this document. And as the Honorable Member for St. Peter alluded to, well, perhaps they now have a document that they can take to the International Monetary Fund. I want to say to this country that there is nothing in this document that the Democratic Labour Party has not said before. The difficulty from day one has been lack of implementation. And 10 years later, it continues to be a lack of implementation. Madam Deputy Speaker, if you doubt me, I want to make the point that there was an infrastructure committee set up by the Democratic Labour Party. A committee which this administration indicated to this country was going to be responsible for all of the projects that were coming through. All of the listed projects from must be Pickering to Hyatt. But regardless of the project that has been listed and identified, a handful of those projects have actually come to fruition. Every central bank report, every report by the International Monetary Fund has spoken to the lack of implementation by this administration. But you know what is the most telling thing, Madam Deputy Speaker? The most telling thing is that those who sit amongst them, the gentleman for St. Philip West who chaired the Infrastructure Committee of the Democratic Labour Party, also had issues with the failure to implement the very things that they said to this country that they were going to do.
Where is he now?
And when he could disclose to this country that sometimes he does not even know what is happening, that he reads about it in the paper. How in heaven's name, I can't say how the hell, how in heaven's name is the public of this country to believe that by condensing everything that you have not implemented in the last 10 years into one document, that all of a sudden we are supposed to believe that you are going to get it done in the next couple of weeks of the dying days of this administration? You see, the one thing that I agree with for the members in Peter is that everything is now in this document. The private sector is consulted. The only people who haven't consulted with the government is the Barbados Labour Party. But the part that we will never see eye to eye is that while these things are listed in this document, the people who could never implement what is in this document is the Democratic Labour Party, Madam Deputy Speaker. They could never be responsible for implementing something they have not implemented in 10 years. They cannot do it in 10 days. They cannot do it in 10 weeks. And it is on the admission of their own people. If you sit in a cabinet and you are critical of the lack of implementation and inertia on the part of the Democratic Labour Party administration, nothing can be more damning, Madam Deputy Speaker. So if it is that you believe that we are wasting our time coming in here and that the members of the Barbados Labour Party should walk out, let me tell you something. We have been sent here to do a job by the people of this country. But the same discourtesy that began at the beginning of my tenure as leader of opposition business is the same discourtesy that exists today. Because up until a few minutes ago, I found out from the leader of government business the heads that we are supposed to be doing in the estimates. And for the benefit of the public, these are things that we have been discussing over and over, year after year, and saying there has to be a better way to do these things in relation to the things that matter to people. If you are going to be examining ministries and you're going to be asking questions about how money is spent, you need to give the Barbados Labour Party or any opposition the opportunity to know what is coming. But it is reflective of an administration that does not care. They don't care about what we say, even though they want to tell us that we don't put forward proposals. They want to tell us we don't put forward proposals. Every time the Barbados Labour Party leader has spoken in this chamber, she has spoken about working together with the Democratic Labour Party. When she mentioned the fact that we should have not just the Joint Select Committee, the team of advisors, economic advisors, they ignored the leader of the Barbados Labour Party. But what did they do? They sought comfort from the former leader of the Barbados Labour Party, in whose bosom they now want to roll around with. And in so doing, forgot that the Minister of Finance was on a political platform in 2008 calling him a political schizophrenic and accusing him of corruption of the highest order in this country. They think people are stupid in this country, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we have said if we have the resources in this country, there's no problem turning to people who first of all put their country first and their party second. But the optics have to stop, because the fact that you could turn to the leader of the former leader of the Barbados Labour Party, but then it perhaps was not comfortable with other members on the other side, and therefore they turned away from that. And he's still up to this day advising you of what to do and how to do it. But you want other people to tell you what to do, or you would rather run this country into the ground and continue to suck on the nipples of the public purse in the dying days of this administration. Madam Deputy Speaker, these estimates do not reflect a caring government. It does not reflect an administration that is in touch with what is happening in the country. I too, like the member for St. Michael East, have the same concerns that others have, and others in the city and other places have. That all of a sudden, after 10 years, the Democratic Labour Party administration now wants to come to the constituency of St. Michael South East and pave a road, Plumtree Road and Salters Tenantry Road, they now want to take notice of. When for 10 years, people's cars are breaking down. Old people are trying to traverse potholes with their groceries to get into their houses. Ambulances have difficulty accessing old people when there is an emergency. But this Democratic Labour Party administration would want to come with some optics on the eve of an election and make the people feel as though they care about them. But you see, we have a Prime Minister as well that wants to tell you to like it or lump it. We heard those words before, Madam Deputy Speaker, by a same Democratic administration. And I want you to understand, people in this country have a problem with the amendments to the Police Amendment Act. They don't have a problem with the amendments because people don't believe that the police must have powers to carry out their job. The people in my constituency have a difficulty with the amendments because they are the individuals who don't have a pal like the Prime Minister. They are the individuals in this country who the Prime Minister has not ensured that the resources are there for the judicial system to be able to function properly, that the backlog, the load of court cases, the backlog of court cases are reduced. They're the ones that are tied up in the system. They're the ones that can't get access to the attorneys when they need them, because this Prime Minister is famous for telling his members, get lawyers. But a lot of my people, when they are searched and their doors are knocked down, don't have the ability to get an attorney as swift as the Honourable Prime Minister would want to advise his own members to do. So it is not that we don't share the concerns about crime in this country, but the Barbados Labour Party takes a different approach. I have said in this chamber time and time again, let the police do more community policing. Let them get on the ground and work within the communities. If it is that you have to set up outposts in communities, do so. Give the police the resources in order to function. But you cannot make this country a police state. We have said to you we have issues with the amendments to the Act simply because you have not consulted the very people who are going to be affected. And this is not the first piece of legislation where this administration has taken a position where there's no consultation. Not even with the Barbados Bar Association they want to consult. And these are the things that plague this administration. It is not that we do not believe that you don't mean well, but the writing is on the wall, and it is evident that you are doing the wrong things in order to do the job. And no matter how many times members on this side have risen and tried to highlight the problems to you, when the Barbados Labour Party highlighted the issue of the sewage problem, what happened? The Prime Minister said nothing. It didn't matter. It didn't matter to the Minister of Health. I heard a member yesterday, the member who now professes to be the leader of the United People's Party, it is. Forget that she was the leader, she brought a matter of urgent public importance in this chamber. Not on behalf of a party. She brought it on behalf of the people of this country, the people who were suffering at that particular time, and she brought it in the name of the people. And whether you can stand in this chamber now and play the party politics to give the impression that both administrations are to blame, none of that is relevant to the people of this country. We have said we have a problem and we need to fix it. Whether it was to be built or it wasn't to be built, Madam Deputy Speaker, is irrelevant at this time. There is sewage oozing out of the streets of the Hastings area, and it needs to be fixed. I live in St. Lawrence, and I can tell you I have mosquitoes the size of beetles. I am getting bitten every single day. Every single night I am getting bitten. Businesses are closing down. People are under pressure. This is not the time for the political antics to try to score political points in this chamber. You are either for the people or you are not for the people. But you can't be a member of the Barbados Labour Party, take one position, and then come back in this chamber and behave as though now you are some new angel on the horizon. Let us be real. And those things, Madam Deputy Speaker, are what concern our people. The member for St. Michael Blackett, the member for St. Michael's Central, asked questions yesterday about what the Barbados Labour Party would do in relation to constituency football, what it would do in relation to constituency council. But I'm going to tell this chamber what we will do. Because I have been privy to sit in meetings in relation to the constituency councils. And while I commend the efforts of ordinary Barbadians wanting to play a role in their community, what I will never accept as being the norm in this country is when proposals are coming from members of the Democratic Labour Party, consultants of the Democratic Labour Party, and community development officers are indicating to individuals on that committee that they must in some way endorse the policies of the application that has been made by the former minister. Those things I cannot accept. When you omit people in a community who should be in a position to serve, but they are not included. When you fail to put forms for people to volunteer in a community center so that average persons across the community can be included. When you fail to produce annual reports on how the money is spent and how the money is not spent. These are the problems that we have, and while we will support anything that empowers our people, we will be forever against a system that replicates a Democratic Labour Party administration that only gives power when it feels it can get something back from the people. Because there are people in need who should benefit from constituency council's money, but they haven't benefited. If you don't know somebody on the constituency council, you can't get no help. Imagine that. You have to know somebody who sits on the council in order to get assistance from a constituency council. And our record in constituency football is clear. The leader of the Barbados Labour Party put together the Lime Pelican tournament, understanding in the Barbados Labour Party that it isn't about this patronage to people to play football because you like the family member or they support the Democratic Labour Party. But no, instead being able to empower people to rise above their circumstances and to create a semi-professional league in this country. That is the record of the Barbados Labour Party. We understand that it puts money in the hands of vendors. We understand that youngsters and people who may not ordinarily have played football were able to get a stipend to be able to play. But you cannot in the one hand tell me about the David Thompson tournament, and in the next breath you don't put any lights on any playing field for the last 10 years across this country. You don't fix any grounds, you don't fix any pavilions. And in St. Michael's Southeast, have the nerve to come in St. Michael's Southeast and rename the Map Hill Pavilion. The one thing that the Democratic Labour Party can point to in 10 years is the renaming of the Map Hill Pavilion. That is it. Not a single thing else they can point to that they have done in the constituency of St. Michael's Southeast. So don't ask the Barbados Labour Party what we are going to do. We have a record that is crystal clear. When you came to office as a Democratic Labour Party administration, unemployment was at unprecedented levels. 6%. When you look at the record of the Democratic Labour Party, they continue to say that they inherit debt, they inherit the problems and the challenges, they blame the global recession, forgetting that all of us in this chamber and outside recognize that there are other countries that are performing better than Barbados. They forget that people understand that in 2008, the Barbados Labour Party was liberalizing the market, that we were looking at other sectors apart from tourism to be able to grow out the Barbados and diversify the Barbados economy. But you came to office with lots of money in the treasury. And what did you do? You have nothing to show for the years of time that you have been the government of this country. Not a single thing you can point to and say, you have uplifted the young people, you have improved the lives of the elderly. Giving the elderly little pittance here and there doesn't mean anything to them. You keep coming here and talking about, you're laying things about the aging population. But how do the people in my constituency, the elderly people who have now been confronted with a rise in their medical care, how do they deal with it daily when they can see ministers continuing to hire people in various government departments? But yet they sometimes cannot be able to afford whether it's the glaucoma medication or the high blood pressure medication. These are the realities, Madam Deputy Speaker, and when I listen to the Honourable Prime Minister, I feel as though I am operating in a different Barbados from him. Because it is the same speech year after year about people, about children going to school, garbage getting collected.
Yeah, people didn't have water 60 years ago.
It's the same speech year after year, that we are doing the best that we can be as we can do as a country. It is the same speech. But the difference is that the lives of ordinary Barbadians has not changed. And instead, the situation has gotten worse. The realities of business in this country, Madam Deputy Speaker, you have a situation where, on the one hand, they talk about, in the document with the Sustainable Recovery Plan, they speak to the issue of investment and entrepreneurship. But can the minister responsible for commerce and small business cannot tell you how many people have benefited from any funding in relation to his ministry? In fact, they have not even increased the budget available to the Small Business Association. So at a time when you should be encouraging small business in this country, when you should be paying back the people who are owed money by this administration from the various government departments.
Honourable Member, you have 2 minutes left.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When you should be doing those things to give this country confidence that you've got the ball rolling, that everything is working, that ministers are now lined up to implement the things that are in this document. There is nothing in these documents and in these estimates that can give this country that confidence. Madam Deputy Speaker, I say to the people of this country, and I give you the assurance that the Barbados Labour Party understands the hurt and the pain and the suffering. Every time I speak in this chamber, I ask the good Lord to let the words of my heart and the meditation of my soul be acceptable in his sight. Because I know in my heart that when I speak with a passion and the hurt that I feel from my people. And I want nothing more than for a Democratic Labour Party administration to do the right thing. But I know that right now the only savior for this country is a Barbados Labour Party administration under the leadership of the Barbados Labour Party leader, Mia Moore Motley. I thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.